Okay, welcome back. It is 8/22 of 2015. We're going to take a look at Brentano's value theory in an essay in the Cambridge Companion from 220 to 237. And it actually evaluates value theory through three levels of mind: passive mind, active mind, and Poietikos, or formed mind. So we're going to begin with the Dekunta threshold, Aristotle's Dekunta threshold. That's where passive mind begins to go to work. And passive mind begins as energia receptivity. And this is where we acquire the secondary presentation, or the psychical presentation. It is acquired as a phantasm. It's a first-order psychical presentation. And we do employ sense perception, and we employ imagination. And we grasp the psychognostic idea of object. We grasp object as psychognostic idea, and we form the inexisting general topoid. So the receptive energia mind, the nous as energia receptivity, will actually grasp and form the inexisting general topoid. Now, along with this inexisting general topoid, there is a material principle. The presentation within itself possesses a potential dunamis power, an additional potentiality, to go beyond itself to active thinking. So the energia, energia receptivity, will end up possessing an inherent additional dunamis, potentiality of power to go beyond itself as active mind, as active thinking, and to move beyond inexisting general topoid. So there is this inherent dunamis residing within energia. Now, under active mind, we have the accidental change of the secondary presentation, where the mind as that dunamis potentiality is going to actualize as energia. And the subject engages in a process of poietikos, or mind making here. It's a process of active mind adding mental principle to the material principle of presentation. In the first moment, it's the act of judging the presentation. In other words, we're going to form an additional presentation of presentation. We're going to form a deeper presentation of the initial topoid presentation. So it's a self-reflexive moment. The intentionality sign is formed out of the existing general topoid. And this counts as an accidental change because it is necessarily linked with the subject, but the sign, however, becomes a self-existing substance. The sign exists as self-existing without subject. It becomes a reality as self-existing. So signs equal substance, but judgments and emotions equal accidents that are always tied up with the subject. The sign, however, is a substance of self-existence. It takes on a self-existence of its own. And that takes us to that third moment of the poietikos, formed mind, where there's going to be an emotional change of value presentation, where energia is going to become positing. And an object of desire, we find the object is immanent as presentation and immanent as desired. And emotional or aesthetic judgments are also accidents of presentation linked to a subject. They are subject dependent. But the presentation sign continues to self-exist. Without a subject, it attains its own sense of objectivity. It obtains some objective self-existence. Now, the concepts of beauty and goodness emerge in the realm of emotions, and these concepts are motivated by the inexisting presentations and the subject's mental state, or motivational base of a mental state. So these concepts are motivated by inexisting presentations in that motivational base. So we form positive values by adding, basically. We combine self-existing signs plus motivational mental state, and that will result in forming potential positings as loved or hated or indifferent or comparatively better or worse. So ethics for Brentano is coherence theory. It's an alignment with the Poietikos, formed mind. Our ethic of positing is always one in alignment with the mental state that results from the formed Poietikos, formed mind. So that takes us on to, after we've got this mental state that has evolved from our Poietikos, formed mind, how does that mental state critique value? How do we critique that which is to be posited as the good? How do we determine and critique that which is going to be the noble good, the noble righteous good? And so 3b will address the determining the objectively better value for positing. And Brentano does employ 7 axioms of preference: existence over non-existence, good presentation over bad presentation, joy over sadness, love of good over love of bad, object of knowledge as preferred over all other objects, and evident judgment preferred over blind judgments, where we just accept what's out there, and insight over error. Now there is a universality, and it is intersubjective. Intersubjective summation of mental states critiques one's own individual mental state. So we do engage in dialogue at the Da Kunta threshold, and we will appropriate the intersubjective mental state, which will critique our own motivational base. Now we do take up tendency. We always posit toward the more probable to actualize, the more probable moment in actuality that it's on the verge of emerging to the good becomes our target. And then for objectivity, beauty and goodness are truly objectively present as essential properties in objects that possess them. And quality of emotion will always directly relate to this objective intentionality. So there is some objectivity even in Brentano's system. The Greek beauty, or the noble righteousness, does exist as essential property in the objects that possess beauty and goodness. And so they can be appropriated as actual essential properties. But he gives us this article is really superb by approaching value by looking at the 3 stages of mind, because value correlates perfectly along with a mental state. So how do we achieve motivational mental state? Well, we achieve a motivational mental state by passing through passive mind to active mind to eventual Poietikos, formed mind, and its accompanying emotional and motivational mental state. So it's all about acquiring a mental state, because mental state is going to be used in unison with that lexical network of signs that we have formed. And so we have a lexical network of signs that exist on their own. They have their own self-existence. Coupled with our motivational base of mental state, we can actually then move on to axioms, and we can actually form the better good to be posited, the praxis, practical positing. So it's really a tremendous essay that was really, I think, the proper approach for appropriating value theory in Brentano, because Brentano doesn't exclude universality. He does include a universality of critique through the intersubjective summation of mental states, but you can't understand value theory unless you understand how we acquire mental state. How do we acquire Poietikos, the Aristotelian Poietikos, Nous-Poietikos, or the mind-making moment? How do we reach mind-making moment, and then from mind-making move on to value presenting? From mind-making to value presenting. Well, mind-making creates within the psyche of the self a motivational mental state. And motivational mental state is going to be accompanied with the self-existing objectivity of significations. And we take significations and join them with motivational mental state, and we can move on to actually forming the objectively better praxis positing. So it's a beautiful lesson. It's only, let's see, only 17 pages, very, very brief essay, but the perfect presentation for achieving value theory and Brentano. And that takes us up through 2, 3, 7.